You're listening to Two Babies, a Business and a Business, a podcast about business, babies, marriage, life, and more. And today I am joined by my good friend, Richard Fallah, who is the co-founder and CEO of Vbout, which is a marketing automation software tool. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
We're talking about AI and we're talking about how it works in the world of marketing. And I wanted to bring Richard on here because he's in a pretty unique position in the sense that he has basically a tool that helps with marketing automation. So he's already been kind of in this game, I would say, for quite a long time. I wanted to understand how a guy like him looks at this, how he's been looking at it since the beginning of his platform development. And how some of the more recent changes to AI have, I guess, changed his way of thinking or changed maybe the way he's looking at his own tools and how they can be applied in marketing. So that's kind of the conversation I wanted to have here. So Richard, thank you for joining me, and thank you for correcting me there when my brain stopped working. One day, I guess we'll have artificial intelligence that can just do my thinking for me, right?
It's already out there.
It's already out there, right? So I guess that's a good kind of starting point. I mean, AI has kind of hit the scene in a pretty heavy way here, I would say, starting somewhere around, I don't know, November 30th. All of a sudden, the world really started paying attention. That's when ChatGPT kind of came out or when OpenAI came out with their ChatGPT tool. And that's really when I think a lot of people's kind of attention got sort of turned on to this, but you've been working with artificial intelligence or the concept of AI for quite a long time at Vbout. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, and AI in general, Peter, is nothing new. It's been for decades already. In fact, the first chatbot powered by AI, I think, was in the 60s. But the concept of AI was always a vertical, specialized, doing one thing really good. For example, word predictions. For example, predictive analytics. But now we came into a new era where AI is doing a whole bunch of different tasks moderately and well, which is why they call it an artificial narrow intelligence, or on the road to artificial general intelligence. So that it does an array of tasks and it does them really well as a human would do, and even better. Right. So that's why now it's have surfaced, not to mention ChatGPT interface has made it a lot easier to interact with this intelligence. Yeah, which is why everybody started adopting it.
Yeah, and that's, I think, an interesting point in the sense that I think prior to ChatGPT, maybe some of the AI tools were a little more out of reach for what I would call kind of non-techie people. Right. So obviously, I think, Richard, you're a pretty techie kind of guy, right? So you've obviously been developing Vbout and you've been using different tools to help make marketing more intelligent, I guess. Okay, maybe why don't we start there in terms of how have you been using AI to make marketing more intelligent through Vbout?
Absolutely. So from a marketing perspective, I think most people think immediately email marketing, social media, automation drips and SMS, lead generation, forms. So this is the world of marketing in general, right? A lot more goes into it, but from a software perspective. Now in Vbout, because we do all these things, we collect so much data that one of our main challenges is how we can turn that data into meaningful information. How can we use it to predict the best time to send out an email for somebody, an SMS message, or perhaps even predict the outcome of a lead converting? So these are some of the things that we started experimenting with a couple of years ago when we opened our data lake, or all the data that we have, and we started to structure them, unstructure them, and then build some internal models and for research purposes to see how we can drive better results. So from where we stood, we launched predictive email and SMS sending. So that means the system will find out the best time to send an email campaign for customers. And that by itself doubled almost open rates for about 70% of the adopters for that feature. And I'm just giving one example. Another feature was predicting and giving suggestions for subject lines that trigger open rates. So mind you, these are not using ChatGPT or OpenAI or any component. These are all internally built models based on, Python libraries, our own data sources. And then come the new wave of stuff, right? ChatGPT, OpenAI, and now Google is coming up with their own API. Made things easier, particularly in the content generation space, sentiment analysis space, and also language understanding space. So what we're doing, beside developing our own stuff, we're adopting those available libraries to create emails using AI, to create SMS copy and social media copy using AI, to send a chat command saying, can you write an email for Christmas holiday, make it funny, 300 word email. And then that will create that email in Vbout. That's a feature that we're experimenting with as well, hopefully to be launched soon. So again, in the area of things, I want to divide it into the verticalized, specialized on our own data set that we built, and the general content generation and synthesis on the OpenAI front of things. Make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. And so I guess kind of what you're talking a little bit about here is, if I think about being a new customer to, say, Vbout as an example, obviously there's some stuff that comes out of the box with your tool. And then there's potentially some things that plug into your tool. Is that kind of what you mean? Or are you looking at sort of making everything out of the box, but you're experimenting on sort of different plugins and things like that? Can you help me understand how that looks in your mind?
So some of the features like predictive email sending, you don't have to connect anything. It's already baked into the system. All you need to do is just start to send out emails, and the system will learn over a period of a couple of months or 7-8 campaigns. The content generation, however, for email, we have 2 ways for you to use it. One, you can use our own credit system. So it's an add-on you purchase for a few dollars, and you can start creating email copies. Or you can get your own OpenAI key, add it to Vbout, and use your own key, so you bear the cost, and that's a free add-on, so you don't have to pay for that.
Interesting.
At least for now. So these are the 2 ways that we do it. Everything that we do on the marketing side is probably going to be baked into the system, so it's not like you're doing something somewhere else, coming back and integrating it into your copy, content, etc.
Yeah. And that's actually a good kind of question or point I wanted to talk about, because one thing I'm noticing, obviously, and I'm sure you're seeing the same, is the incredible explosion of tools and sort of magic things that do magic things for you. And all there's literally like thousands of them. I just had a call with my team this morning about, how do you even navigate this space in terms of all these different tools? And what I told my team is, number one is really figure out what problem you want to solve. So as opposed to going out and saying, hey, here's the 15 or 30 tools we can try, how about it's like, what problem do we want to solve? And maybe my problem is, we need smart automation, marketing automation software, right? And so therefore it's like, okay, maybe that narrows it down to, okay, which tools that offer this service have the different features maybe incorporated, or ways I can plug in. Is that sort of a way that businesses should be looking at it from your perspective?
In terms of product adoption, of course, never buy things you don't need. You're going to hear a lot of buzz and new tools coming out. This is almost like the App Store in 2007, right?
Yes.
Developers started to build all sorts of things. And some of the most downloadable apps were actually silly apps, like fart noises and a little game that has to avoid the mountains not to crash, silly things like that, right? So you're going to see the same explosion of apps, some of which might be useful. For example, I'm using this app called SiftPod that summarizes podcasts like the Huberman podcast, the Motley Fools, and it just sends me an email every day with the summary of the entire 2-3 hour podcast and bullet points and paragraph. That's a pretty cool way. I know I'm going to be using this tool, and it's probably going to get better. Maybe it's going to create some voiceover in the future. Again, so whatever you need, I know I consume these podcasts, so I know I need this tool. Now, as a business, I always encourage trying and testing different things until you love them, but it needs to replace a real world application. Otherwise, you're just going to waste your time and obviously money. And
I would say probably, and I think you probably will agree with me, but we'll see, is, a lot of tools people tried maybe before, if it had some promise, it didn't do everything you wanted to maybe at the time, there's value in going back and trying that tool again, because I know that there's a lot of investment going into a lot of tools. And obviously a lot of tools are adding different plugins and different kind of tools and whatever. So I would imagine that some of the ones that have had enough staying power that have been around for a long time are probably just getting better and better over time. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, definitely. Every platform you adopt, you can tell in their roadmap, in their open releases. You should track this with every company, regardless how small they are, because then you can tell if they're just creating products and just putting them out there, trying to make some money, and then not paying enough attention. So I always look into the roadmap of a company,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how proactive they are in releases, how proactive they are in events, because they need to be improving on the product. And the way they improve on the product is by listening to you as a consumer.
Right.
So if they have an open suggestion that you can influence that roadmap, is also key. And I think good companies do this. We do this at Vbout, for instance. We have monthly meetings with partners and clients who give us suggestions. We have
Mm-hmm.
an open roadmap. Clients always send us thank yous because they're like, oh, I suggested this 3 months ago, and now I see it on the platform, kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah.
So yeah, I think, looking at a product, not necessarily does everything,
Oh,
but looking at the entire package, if you may.
yeah.
The actual product use case and what problem it's solving, the company on itself and the continuity of that company, because you don't want them to be disappearing tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
the price point, and also how fast can you get support if you need it. That's also important, right?
Yeah, that is also important. Yeah. Yeah. I think probably a lot of, I mean, I don't know. My sense is that a lot of these plugins and these little sort of like add-ons and things like that are likely going to maybe disappear over time. Maybe not, but probably a lot of the bigger tech companies and the more sophisticated tech companies will just kind of swallow them up and incorporate them. And so again, I'm sort of, suggesting to people, figure out what your tech stack is, but really lean on, I think, your bigger tech providers first in terms of, okay, we use G Suite, for example, here, and it's like, okay, Google's releasing a bunch of stuff, right? And so, right, so okay, this is what we use for our internal, obviously, email and all this sort of standard tools. And okay, what do we use for our automation tool? And what are the big tools? And to your point, what is their roadmap? What are those providers' roadmaps in terms of adoption of AI? I think that's a really important place to look, as opposed to here's the thousands of shiny whistles that, could disappear. And then don't get me wrong, because there's probably some really niche ones that maybe solve a really
Yeah.
specific problem that you should consider. But,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of companies, this is going to be an overwhelming space really quickly. And so I guess my suggestion, and, seeing what your feedback sounds consistent, is look at the big providers first, and understand kind of what they're planning to incorporate into their roadmaps, right?
Ask your existing providers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How are you changing your roadmap? Do you have any new features that's going to empower us to use AI? 100% healthy conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. And so do you have any, I guess, as a SaaS provider and as a provider of marketing, a marketing tool that's, I guess, providing a pretty central service when it comes to marketing. Are you excited about this AI revolution that's in front of us? Are you concerned about it? Like, kind of give us a sense of kind of a guy that sits in your position, how you're feeling about it.
Absolutely excited about the opportunity to be I'm 40, so I lived at the age of Atari, and that was really exciting.
Yeah.
Then the graphics got better, and then you have the Nintendo, and then you came and you have the evolution of the PC and Mac and App Store. So I've seen that revolution.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this is another one.
Yeah.
But what this is going to do is it's going to create a flood of information
Mm-hmm.
that's not powered by humans. So it's a language that's being invented by non-humans, trained by humans, and by code. So I think there just need to be that understanding, that not all content is now going to be human generated.
Right.
Very good content will be powered by machines. And also the misinformation, because some of this information generated by AI also, although they could be accurate a lot of times, but there are chances for misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they call in, hallucinations.
Yeah.
In the world of AI, that's not accurate. And if you make, decisions based on every single response, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
But other than this, I'm super excited. It's an opportunity for wealth to be created, new services. You're going to see people specializing in verticalized AI stacks or products, features. very soon.
Yeah. Yeah, there's huge innovation coming, right? So it's pretty exciting, I think, for especially a guy like you who's kind of on the leading edge of innovation, right? So it's gives you lots of opportunities to get your feet wet in the things you love, I think.
As building technologies is what we specialize. Your world is on the service side and
Yeah.
managing that strategy. We focus on the software and how you apply that software.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little kind of orchestra, if you want to
Yeah,
call it.
totally. Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned something in your last answer about sort of obviously machines, writing content, creating things, and where do you see, I guess, the role of humans in all of this, and where do you see kind of marketing going in terms of obviously sort of machines doing their thing and then humans having to have to do their thing? Kind of what's your view on that side of things?
Yeah, I think I look at these tools as ways to amplify someone's existing work. And everybody talks about this, but usually the harder the problem, the more you get paid, the more you're needed. If you just write 750-word article for a living, that's something that could be easily replaced. But if you're a data analyst, right, and now ChatGPT came up with their own plugin to analyze data, big data, and give you data analysis, information and beautiful charts. I don't think that's going to necessarily replace the job of a BI consultant or big data consultant. That's probably need to be complement to what they do. So this is how I look at it. The harder the problem you solve, which requires skill, time, expertise, the more likely you will need to rely on those tools to make your job more efficient. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does answer my question. Yeah, for sure. We actually had this conversation internally today as well. We had sort of our weekly AI stand up, which is a new thing in our organization, which I think I would recommend for everybody else listening to this podcast to consider as well, because this stuff's coming really fast, so you better be ready for it. But in our weekly stand up, we talked about, okay, there's some cool tools that can help us come up with some content planning and kind of can help us look at the internet and see what's performing well and come up with frameworks and come up with, here's some strategies and here's what we want to do on the content side. And Brad from my team sort of said, yeah, but we always have clients that sort of say, yeah, but I know my client and they think this, or my client always kind of says this. And, there's always going to be that sort of push and pull a little bit, right? Yeah, the machine's saying this is what's going to work, but you know your client super well, and ultimately, those conversations that you have maybe that aren't on the internet aren't necessarily captured necessarily by the tool either, right? So there's always going to be this kind of mix of both, right? And
working together,
right? Yeah, and certainly I think things like this, like longer form audio, I think is going to do really well. Obviously, things like brand building, selfishly PR, I think is going to be in a more important kind of place to go in terms of building your brand, because I think search is going to change a little bit. But so lots is going to change. It's going to be interesting.
I look at it as the flood of information.
Yeah.
Before, maybe 20 years ago, if you wrote a course about AI, you probably have a lot of success, thousands of access, and you probably make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But now you can go to ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT or Bard to write you an outline for a course about AI.
Yeah.
It'll do it for you. Then you'll tell it to elaborate about every single module. So you can write a course in one day.
Yeah.
Make it look pretty, post it. And you're going to see thousands of these popping up on a daily basis. So what that means to us as consumers, like, we're going to be flooded. We're going to need tools to help us navigate through this flood of data and information.
Yeah.
And that's where data access is going to be monetized so highly. For me to be paying attention to any content moving forward, it needs to be so good that it's going to be worth my time, that I think a lot of the cheap form content is going to stop to exist or become less important.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. So for sure. And I think one of the things I think we saw even last week from Google is, and we've seen this from a whole bunch of different providers too, is multimodal content, right? So, not just, where companies used to just write blogs to rank on, Google or whatever. It's like, that's going away quick, right? So, companies are going to have to get a lot more innovative, creative, start to use design better, start to use other forms of content much more robustly. So, I think that, for all companies, they need to really think about this and really think about how they can get into the content game in a much more robust way than before.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Well, hey, that's all the questions I had for today. So I really appreciate you joining me today. I think you provided a lot of great insights.
Thank you,
And
Peter.
maybe just quickly before I let you go, why don't you just remind everybody your name and how they might be able to get a hold of if they're looking to connect about Vbout.
Absolutely. So you can just look me up, Richard Fallah. You'll probably have my name in the podcast somewhere,
Yes.
and probably over my video here. I run my company Vbout for the past 9 years right now in the marketing space. We build the marketing stack to help you manage your lead generation, nurture campaigns. And we've helped thousands of businesses and digital agencies organize their marketing infrastructure, generate leads for them and for their clients. And obviously, like we talked about today, Peter, build technologies to help you reach your customers better. That's what we do. You can always find me by searching me, or just go to vbout.com to find more about Vbout.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Richard.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks everyone for listening.
Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Two Babies in a Business. To learn more, visit ciprcommunications.com or catch us on our socials at CIPRcoms.